Hello YouTube, back again. It's me, Patterson. Just giving you guys a quick video again, as promised. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about the military, what to expect when you come in, things you should and shouldn't do when you get in here to the military. Uh, you guys know me. I'm repping 323rd Training Squadron Mustangs. Got my old basic training shirt. Yeah, so let's hop right into it. So a lot of people come into the military, you just got out of basic training, went to tech school, you made a whole bunch of money, especially if you're reserve and guard. Reserve and guard people, you guys know it. We get paid slightly extra compared to the active duty side. They'll probably get their e-pay. What am I saying? They'll probably get their little e-pay as in enlisted pay at their particular grade. E1, E2, E3, whatever it is. We coming in, we also get our BAH, we also get our BAS if possible, we get our per diem. So all those factors come into play. You leave basic training, you now become operational, and you got all this money that you never seen before, especially if you were a younger person. When I left basic training, I left with approximately, I want to say maybe about $5,000 or more. My buddy, he left with about 6 or 7, I believe, because his actual BAH was a lot higher than mine. We both had dependent BAH because he was married, I had kids. So there are a lot of factors that determine what you're going to be paid and how that pay is also going to come into play with your per diem, your BAH, whether it's a single rate or dependent rate, and BAS, different things like that. So one big thing I'll tell you guys that I noticed. The first thing, number one thing I always see with anybody that leaves basic training, the first thing they get is what? New car and tattoo. New cars and tattoos. I cannot tell how many people I've seen leave basic training, and it's not that they get out and they buy a new car. Yeah, it's necessary, but when you get out of basic training and the first thing you do is buy a Mercedes, or you buy an Infinity. I got a buddy, he bought an Infinity. He could not afford that. I was gonna say something, I'm keep these videos clean, PG. But he couldn't afford sorry, not Infinity, he got a Cadillac. He couldn't afford that Cadillac. It was, I never forgot, it was really nice too. I drove it a couple times, but got out of basic training, the first thing he did was buy a Cadillac, and he was only an E3 at the time, I believe, not even an E3, probably an E2. How the hell could an E2 afford a Cadillac? Think about it. Elaborate on that for me. His Cadillac, I think his payments were about pretty low, I would say, for a Cadillac, but I think he was at about 389, I think it was, per month. Then you got to add his insurance, being a young driver. Then also on top of that, it's not really a fuel efficient car. Let's just throw that out there already. Then he got off base, so he was living off base because he was at an Air Force base. And our Air Force bases, we joint bases, we became joint bases. So the dorms are pretty full, for their component of the military. There were, I wouldn't say the branch, but they were still in our base. They had one dorm to themselves. The dorm was full, and he's a E2, E3. When he got to E3, they allowed him to live off base. So now you got an $800 rent that you gotta pay. $800 rent, $389 car payment, and on top of that, his insurance, and he still gotta buy gas for the car, and that's not even including necessities, groceries and toiletries and things of that effect. You might eat out here and there once in a while. He cooked a lot, and I'm sure he cooks a lot because he didn't have money to support himself. He was living what we say in the financial world above your means. That's one thing you don't do when you come out of the military, fresh start. Don't live above your means. Another thing that and we spoke about this. We sit down and we reminisce a lot. A lot of things that we talk about is when we first got started, what we would change, things that we'll do differently. And one thing we always have in common is that we didn't invest our money and use it wisely. Myself, on the other hand, I'm a reservist, so I have a civilian job as well as I have a military job. So one thing that I learned, which I was lucky about, I had a friend of mine from my job who actually sat down with me and insisted that I do a 401k. And that was my first pretty much big introduction to investing. Now, I invested before, but I was doing foreign exchange. Foreign exchange, if you guys know, brings you a big return. It brings you a return really quick, but you could also lose your money really quick. Like I could get into a trade, like for example, on Friday. I got into a trade on Friday. I lost about, what was it, $79, $78, and I got back $89 on profit. Then I went back and I lost another 50. But by the time the day ended, I'd made most of that money back already. And that's how quick foreign exchange moves. And I've been doing foreign exchange trading for a long time, so I pretty much understand it. What I just started learning more is stocks and various type of investments like indices. I heard about these things before: mutual funds, ETFs, things like that. You hear about them, but nobody explains it to you. No one takes time to explain these things. So one big thing that I would say is when you come out from when you become operational, take your time, invest in some education, and learn about finances. Set aside money to save. So you come out, you're essentially living for free, I should say. You're essentially living in the dorms. You have a chance to save as much money as you could. If you're the type of person, every Friday night, Saturday night, you need to go out and enjoy yourself, yeah, budget for those things. But at the same time, set aside money that you need to save for things like moving off the dorm. Because eventually nobody wants to stay on the dorm or stay on base, for the entire career. You don't want to be an E4, which I do know people who they're a little higher on the ranking scale and they prefer to stay on base because it saves them money. So you don't want to be that individual that it's time for you to move off base and you're hurting financially because you didn't take time to save. So there's a lot of things that I see like that. If you're going to start off saving, the first thing I would say is get yourself an automated system where you save. Do not depend on yourself and your integrity to set aside the amount that you say you're going to set aside to save. For example, for years I've been saying I was going to save $100 a month. And for years I never saved $100 a month. Then there was that program that Bank of America had called Keep the Change. That was the closest I got to ever saving, my paychecks. My paychecks would drop, and then all of a sudden I had something that would come up, which essentially we always make an excuse to have something come up. So what I started doing over the past couple of years, I started using Digit. So I started using Digit Invest, and I've been using Digit. Sorry, not Digit Invest, but Digit is the app. I'm going to link it down in the description below so you guys could actually download it if you need to. But Digit pulls my money depending on how I spend, and it will take a certain percentage. So when I first downloaded it, I was trying it. I was going through with it. Never took time to really, check into it. I never missed the money. That's the first part. You never really miss the money because it is so minute. So let's say, for example, you have the roundup feature in some places. You spend $2.98. That 2 cents they round up and they set it aside as part of your savings. So Digit does something similar like that. They look at how you spend and they take that money and they pretty much stash it away for you. So I think one time I ran into some kind of issue where like maybe I overspent sometime in some layover. I need some money and I decided to turn to Digit. Well, holy crap. I had probably almost $500 in my Digit account, not even realizing I'd saved that much. So I started looking into Digit a little more, exploring the app and, realizing, this is pretty not bad. It's really not that bad. At first it was free and then it started charging, I think it's $1 a month, I think, to charge, but it actually pays for itself. So there's a feature in Digit called Boost. And Boost, what it does is it maximizes even more savings. So as you spend, it sets aside even more. Those you're probably going to notice because there are larger amounts. For example, I went out and I spent, I couldn't even tell you how much I spent, but my Digit deduction was probably like $50, $40 here. But at the time, because I do a business as well, I was raking in maybe, $3,000 in the week, or, another week I might do $4,000. So my spending was pretty high, so Digit is setting that money aside. So as I go back and I check the Digit, I'm at $800, $1,200, and that money keeps going up. So you also have a feature where you could set aside the savings depending on the needs of the account that you have. So for example, I had my own is set aside to where I have one for credit cards, so it racks up, and when it gets a certain amount, I take that money out and I pay my credit card. Now there's also an automatic credit card payment feature that they have where you have that money set aside, you add your credit card to it, and they would pay the credit card for you when it gets, to that amount. Or it would disperse it between the credit cards that you add to the app. So you don't even gotta worry about those things anymore. I had the credit card, I had rainy day fund, kind of like an emergency fund, and I also had another one which was $5,000. I forgot what it was, but I have those three funds essentially, and I just added a new one, and the new one that I added was an investment fund. So all the money that it collects, it splits between those three, well now four, and once it gets to a certain amount for my investment, which I plan on doing $310 a month, I would take that money out, add it to whatever I'm putting to my investments, and I'll buy my stocks or buy whatever investments I'm working with. So Digit, highly recommended. You're not gonna miss the money. So feel free, go ahead, download it. It's down in the description below, and believe me, you'll enjoy it. You'll start seeing a lot of savings and a lot of return. Not to mention, Digit also gives you 1% dividend every quarter. So 4 times a year, you get 1% of the money that you have that's pretty much just sitting there. So for example, if you got $1,000 in your account and it sits at $1,000, and then your first dividend payment of 1%, you get that $1,010. Then the next one, that's 1% of $1,010. Then the next one, so it keeps going up and it's pretty much compounded at that point in time. So you're pretty much making money as well. So that $1 is pretty insignificant for the amount of benefits you have just using the app. So I highly recommend them. Also, another good app is Acorns. I actually used Acorns long before I used Stash, and I wasn't really impressed with it. But I heard it got a lot better, so I'll be researching that a little more so I could give you guys some more information on that. And I'll provide that app information down in the description below as well. Acorns also takes your money that you save and they also invest it for you. If you're new to investing and you don't want to go through the hassle, then you set up the investments you want. It goes into Acorns. Acorns would invest that money for you. So there are a lot of different apps out there. This is 2019, people. Come on. You could find an app for just about everything. So I say go ahead, start researching. Another great app, actually I shouldn't say great because they charge you $1 a month, but Stash Invest. If you're new to investing, I highly recommend Stash because Stash is for beginners. That $1 a month is a deal breaker for me. I still use Stash because I wanted to prove that at $1 a month, Stash is still usable and it's still beneficial to use Stash as far as investing. So the advantage I give Stash is that it has a learning section where you're new and you could go into this learning section and you could learn everything when it comes to investing, ETFs, stocks, indices, whatever you want to learn about. There's a learning section to give you points according to how you learn. So that is a great app just for that. But as far as most of my money, I probably got maybe $900 in Stash, and the rest of my investments, I got a couple $1,000 spread out between Fidelity. Fidelity is free, that's why I use Fidelity. It's not free for stocks, but it's free for my indices, so I use it for indices. Vanguard is pretty good. They do charge a small management fee. It's really insignificant when you think about it though, but Fidelity is my biggest one, and Robinhood just launched their fractional share program, so guess what? I'm getting on Robinhood's fractional share account. So I opened the Robinhood, I signed up and everything. I'm going to fund the account once it's active, and we'll be set up and good to go. But that's just a overview, pretty much. I'll get more detail as the videos get a little more frequent. Once we get a little more frequent, we got a pretty good rhythm going. I'm gonna start uploading more videos, and it's gonna be detailed. So, for example, the next video I could do is a more in-depth look at what Digit is, at what Stash is. We'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe, like the video, and peace out. See you again.